Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. And Andrea led off today. What a great leadoff batter filling in for Lenny. She did a great job. She actually talked about the Nats in the early part of her show, and I was going to talk about the Nats. In fact, I probably will a little bit, but they have really been on fire lately. Whew! Tell you what, they're going to take that wild card. And I told you in June, remember, I told you in June, do not count out the Nationals. The pitching is too good, and now the hitting is catching up. And to me, if that bullpen comes around, they're just going to be a force in the playoffs. Anyway, good morning, everybody. It is Monday morning. It is August 26th, and here we go with the last week right before we get into Labor Day weekend. And we know Labor Day weekend means call-ups and expanded rosters, all those things. I want to look at our standings here, our last Monday in August. We'll start with the National League first, where the Braves at 80-52 are 6 games ahead of the Nats. The Braves have won 8 straight. Beat the Mets yesterday 2-1. A pitching masterpiece by both sides. I watched a lot of that game. You know, I was impressed with Atlanta's pitching, no doubt. I was also impressed with Matt's pitching for the Mets. He threw over 100 pitches, and then, you know, after 6 innings, he had that blister. They don't think it will affect his next start. Matt's has really been pitching great for the Mets. It may be too little too late, but they're still playing good baseball. They were swept by the Braves this weekend, though, losing 2-1. Atlanta winners of 8 of 10, winners of 8 in a row. Washington winners of 8 of 10, winners of 5 in a row. You look at the run differential between the Nationals and the Braves. Washington's at a positive 107. The Braves that are a positive 78. The record's uncanny. The Nationals much better at home than on the road. The Braves much better both places. Okay, they're 12 games above 500 at home. They're 16 games above 500 on the road. So, I mean, the Braves are going to win the East, barring some monumental collapse. Washington's going to nail down that wild card spot. And I'm not surprised. They beat the Cubs yesterday 7-5 in extra innings. Rendon with a big hit. So, you look at this week, Atlanta goes to Colorado today. It's a makeup game. I was reading this morning, preparing for the show, Dansby Swanson projected to be activated today to play in that game this afternoon in Colorado. You know, Swanson's been on the IL since mid-July, having a breakout year, 17 homers, just really filling out to be that number 1 draft pick from a few years ago when he came out of Vanderbilt. He has played great till he got injured. Now he'll be back for Atlanta for that stretch run. Just what the doctor ordered for the Braves. He hits, he runs, he's got some power. They're in Colorado today. And Washington off today. They start a set tomorrow at home with the Orioles. You got to love that. I mean, if you are a Washington Nationals fan and you see Baltimore on the schedule in late August, wow. And speaking of more manna coming from heaven, Wednesday's outing, Matt Scherzer is going to pitch his second game back from injury. And you got to love the fact that comes against the Orioles. So, strong finish to the season by the Nationals. Andrea said it in her show, since around the end of May, the best record in Major League Baseball. And, man, they are showing it now. Phillies are 11 and a half games out of the division lead, and the Mets are 12. In the National League Central, wow. You know, this division, I've said it's going to come down to the last weekend when the Cubs go to St. Louis to take on the Cardinals the final weekend of the year. I believe that. The Cardinals have now won 4 straight. They've won 8 of 10. They beat Colorado yesterday 11-4. Meanwhile, as I said, the Cubs were losing, being swept by the Nationals. They are now 2.5 games out of first place. St. Louis has won 4 in a row. They've won 8 of 10. They have a 2.5 game lead over the Cubs, a 4.5 game lead over the Brewers. The Pirates swept the Reds this weekend. What's up with that? And, you know, remember me talking about earlier in the year how the Reds had one of the top run differentials in the National League? April, May, June, the Reds were right there in the top 5 run differential. Not so much lately. Their run differential now is a positive 8. Arizona, way above that. The Dodgers, 214, way above that. The Cubs above that. The Cardinals above that. The Mets above that. Washington and Atlanta above that. Now, they are out of the top 5. They're into like 8th or 9th place in run differential. Hence, they fall into 11 games out of the division lead, 60 and 69 overall. Put a blanket over the Reds. They're done for 2019. Pirates, if they could play Cincinnati, they've won 55 games this year. 11 of those against the Reds. If they could play Cincinnati every day, the Pirates could make the playoffs. If they didn't play Cincinnati, they'd have the worst record in the National League. Oh well. Dodgers continue to lead the National League West by 20 games. They lose 2 out of 3 at Chavez Ravine this weekend. I don't know if you watched those games, but what I take away from, and I'll spend a few minutes on this, chat room, what I take away from the Dodgers and the Yankees 3-game set. Well, first of all, the atmosphere in Los Angeles in the stands, if you watch the games, was much like a playoff series. I've not heard Dodger fans that loud in August. I can't remember when. I don't know if I ever have before. But they were rowdy, they were loud, they were into it this weekend as the Yankees came to town. And those players' weekends, so the Dodgers are in all white and the Yankees are in all black. The good guys and the bad guys, And the Yankees, Aaron Judge. And here's what I take away. Aaron Judge, 3 games, homers in each game. That is significant. The Yankees have set a club record for most home runs in a single month, 61 in August. And August isn't over. They're going to hit some more home runs. And Aaron Judge, who's been out most of the year, back in that lineup, providing home runs for an already power-laden team. I just think that's what I take away, number 1, from the weekend series. Judge is hitting. Second thing I take away, the Yankee pitching is better, starting pitching, is better than advertised. You look at Saturday's game, the game the Dodgers won 2-1. The Yankees win yesterday by a score of 5-3. They win Friday night. The starting pitching was solid. Herman goes yesterday. He's now 17-3 on the season. And I think if he doesn't win a Cy Young Award, then we should take away Rick Porcello's from a few years ago. You can say, well, whatever you say, the kid's 17-3, and no one in the major leagues is even close to that mark. And last night, pitching against the Dodgers in Los Angeles on a Sunday night with the nation watching, he goes 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 5 strikeouts. A great outing. The bullpen for the Yankees on display. Ottavino gets his 27th hold, striking out the 2 batters he faces. Canely gets his 24th hold, striking out the batter he faced. Britton gets his 28th hold, pitching a perfect 8. And then there's Aroldis Chapman striking out the side in the 9th inning. The Yankee pitching is better than advertised, folks. And they showed it this weekend in Los Angeles. Now, the other thing I take away fondly from the weekend series, Kershaw and Ryu. Stars. Star left-handed pitchers for the Yankees. Ryu gets obliterated Friday night. 7 earned runs. Kershaw gives up 3 home runs yesterday to the Yankees. And not only right-handers, Mike Ford off the bench for an injured Didi Gregorius hits a total bomb off of Kershaw. Did you watch the game? Kershaw is not Clayton Kershaw. He's hanging curveballs. He doesn't have a fastball. And I see the continued lack of success in the playoffs again this year. Okay, so if you take Kershaw not succeeding, the Dodgers have said over the weekend they're going to skip a Ryu start sometime in the month of September. What I think they should do is put him on the IL for 10 days, similar to what the Yankees did to Herman. Remember, back in July, Herman goes on the IL. He wasn't injured. They were just resting him. Do the same thing to Ryu. Put him on the 10-day. Let him have 2 starts off. And when he comes back, watch and see what happens, Los Angeles. Ryu's career number of innings, 191. He's at 153 now. So he's 38 innings away. What do you say, 6 starts? Do you really need him to make 6 starts? You're 86 and 46. You're 40 games above 500. You're 20 games above in your division. You're 6 games better than the Braves for best record in the National League. Excuse me. So why not put him on the IL and let somebody else take those starts and then bring back Ryu in 2 weeks and watch him dominate again to end the season and have that confidence going into the playoffs? Wild card. Washington leads the wild card, as Andrea said earlier, by 4 games. The Cubs holding the second wild card, and I mean holding on by dear life after being swept this weekend by the Nats. Philadelphia, a game and a half out of the second wild card. Milwaukee and the Mets, 2 games out. But don't you feel like in the National League, it comes down to the fact if the Cubs can play well enough, it's going to be Washington and the Cubs in that wild card game. And in that wild card game, Washington Cubs, I love the Nationals. And I guess you go with Scherzer by default. But Strasburg struck out double digits again yesterday, pitching the best of his career. So if you use a Strasburg in a wild card game, if you use Scherzer in a wild card game, then you come back with Strasburg in game 1 in the division series. And it looks like it'll be LA and Washington in that division series. What a good one that'll be. Cross country, transcontinental, Dodgers, Nationals. Watch out for the Nationals upsetting the Dodgers, which would lead St. Louis and Atlanta battling the other National League champion in division series. Let's take a look at the American League standings, where the Yankees and the Astros now are tied for the best record in the major leagues. They're both 85 and 47. The Yankees a 9-game lead in the East. The Astros a 9.5-game lead in the West. Divisions are over. It's about who's going to have the best record. And I think it comes down to those 2 teams. I personally think it's going to be the Astros. They lead Oakland by 9.5. Astros won 4 in a row. They swept the Angels over the weekend. They're off today. They play Tampa Bay tomorrow at home. The Yankees travel from Los Angeles. They play tonight in Seattle. So the West Coast swing will soon be over, Yankee fans. But if you got to go somewhere, why not go to Seattle, right? Run differential. The Astros sit at 197. The Yankees sit at 152. And then there's Minnesota at 79 and 51, who I really thought would fade a little, and they're not. In fact, it's Cleveland who's fading. The Twins lead the Tribe by 3.5 games on this Monday morning. They're both off today. Tomorrow, Minnesota is at the White Sox. Cleveland is at the Tigers. They both should chomp up on those guys. But over the weekend, Cleveland lost Jose Ramirez. Now, when I told you Jose Ramirez would hit well in July and August and he wouldn't hit in September, I didn't envision him not hitting because he wouldn't be playing. But the hamate bone is broken. He's going to miss, if not all the rest of the regular season, at least most of it. Now, this is the same injury Matt Olson had earlier in the year. The hamate injury is the same injury that Joey Gallo is suffering from, and Joey Gallo's been out for a month. Cleveland, I think, with the loss of Ramirez, even though the pitching is outstanding, could be odd man out in the wild card. Here's why. Look at the wild card this morning. Cleveland is in the first place slot with a half-game lead over Tampa, and Tampa with a half-game lead over Oakland. 3 teams within 1 game. Cleveland, 76-55. Tampa, 76-56. Oakland, 74-55. Oakland plays today at Kansas City. If the A's win that game, and they should, then you've got 3 teams within 1 half game of each other. Now, are there any other teams in the American League who could still vie for that wild card? Well, there's one. Every other team is double digits behind the wild card except for one. This team is 6 games out. And it's the old saying, don't turn your back on them. It's like Lincoln and Ford Theater. There's Boston at 70-62. 6 games out of the wild card. Do the Red Sox have enough to challenge? They're at Colorado for 3. Just throw the scenario at you. Imagine a 3-game sweep by the Red Sox and imagine a 3-game sweep of one of the other 3 teams, and all of a sudden Boston's within 3 games. Now, I know they don't have Sale. But let's face it, Sale wasn't Sale this year anyway. What we do have to face in reality is Boston's pitching stinks, and the hitting, but for Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers, no one else in that lineup has had even close to the year they had in 2018, even with the juiced baseball. Now, Devers is an MVP candidate. Bogaerts is also. They're not going to win MVP, but they're going to be in the discussion. But no one else in that lineup has had even close to the year they had last year. The question is, can any of those players turn it on and make some type of run? We shall see about that. Now, going back to the Yankees and Dodgers, the Yankees made a little subtle move over the weekend. On Friday, they added Corey Guerin off waivers. And they add him to the 40-man roster, and he's up in the major leagues, and he pitched this weekend. And did you see him? He looked really good. He's a guy that's going to face right-handers. Righties have only hit 22 for 97 off of him coming over in the trade. And he looked good this weekend. Just another piece of the puzzle. And it's these pieces of the puzzle that add up to championships. The Yankees are going to get Betances back soon, Severino back soon, and I don't buy it that Severino in the playoffs is going to be in the bullpen. I don't buy it. If Severino comes back in September and pitches and looks like Severino's going to be a starting pitcher for the Yankees in the playoffs. Write it down. Let them talk about it in the press all they want to. The reality is, Severino, when he's right, is better than anything they got, including Herman. And if you throw a Severino healthy with a Herman and a Tanaka, all of a sudden, the Yankee pitching looks pretty formidable. Remember, too, they got a lefty down on the farm rehabbing. And with the addition of Betances to the bullpen and Guerin, Yankee starters will only have to pitch 5 innings. And here comes the bullpen. And is there a better bullpen in Major League Baseball? Let's go to the farm. Guys who you may want to look at. I got 4 this morning, who may be called up for a September edition. Now, I'm not including Gavin Lux. I'll talk about him briefly. He's not one of my 4, but I do like Gavin Lux if the Dodgers were to call him up. No indication they are being close, hush-hush to the vest on that one. But here we go. Nick Madrigal, Chicago White Sox. Their number 4 prospect. Number 1 draft pick last year. College World Series 2018 MVP. Playing at AAA Charlotte. He doubled, stolen base. He has a .311 average, 22 games since being promoted to AAA. Look for him to get a call-up in September and look for him to play second base, and he could be a great fantasy ad down the stretch for your playoffs. Speaking of the White Sox, what about Luis Robert, who hit his 30th homer on Saturday? Their number 1 prospect. He hit his 30th homer, becoming the second player joining Kyle Tucker, remember him, to join the 30-30 club this season. He swiped 36 bases. He has a chance to be a 30-40 player, the first time that's been done in the minors since 2013. But more importantly, when the White Sox season ends at AAA, look for Robert to be up in Chicago this year. So there's 2. Here's the third one. Here's one nobody talks about. And I think this would be a sneaky move by the Astros. Christian Javier, who I watched pitch at High A. He's now at AAA. He made his AAA debut. He had a no-hitter into the 5th inning. 6 scoreless innings, 2-hit ball for AAA Round Rock. And remember, this is a league where the gravity is like on the moon. And the balls fly out of parks at record paces. Yet Javier throws 66 of 90 pitches for strikes, 6 shutout innings. He had a 1.87 ERA with 154 strikeouts in 102 innings before his promotion to AAA. Batters are hitting only 131 off of him this year. I look for the Astros to possibly call him up in September when the AAA season ends and see what he's got. And for fantasy purposes, Christian Javier could be the dark horse pickup of 2019 in September. One more. I saved the best for last, Chappie. You ready? Jesus Luzardo. Oh, I love Luzardo. You love Luzardo. Who doesn't love Luzardo? The number 1 Oakland A prospect. Yesterday, threw 47 of 84 pitches for strikes. Threw 4 2/3 scoreless innings. Struck out 4. He's now given up just 1 run over his last 2 combined AAA starts. I say he makes 2 more starts at AAA and he's in Oakland pitching. And I say that's why the A's make the playoffs. When Luzardo and Manaea both are up within the next 2 weeks for Oakland, you add 2 quality left-handed starting arms. They have a quality bullpen. The A's are in. So it boils down to Tampa and Cleveland. I like Tampa more than Cleveland. I really do. I'm looking at the Dodger-Yankee box score. Looking at Kershaw, I talked about the 3 home runs. He did strike out a season-high 12 and walk none. but he just didn't look like he had that oomph. Peterson led off the game with a homer. That's the home run, the run that Herman gave up. He shut him down after that. The Dodgers only amassed 5 hits overall. Muncy got 1. Turner got 1. Bellinger 0 for 3. His average down to 312. And do you really wonder about Bellinger in the playoffs against quality pitching? I do. LeMahieu, the beat goes on, 2 for 4 for the Yankees. Mike Ford went 2 for 3. Yankees scored 5 runs. Ford doubled. LeMahieu homered his 22nd. Judge his 16th. I talked about that. Ford his 6th homer. Yankees really impressed me this weekend, and I'm hard on them. It's kind of like family. I can be hard on them. I don't want anybody else being that way, but I can be. How about the White Sox in Texas? I'm just pulling some games here, looking at some of these games. Ronaldo Lopez, 5 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts yesterday for the White Sox. Colomé gets his 25th save. It seems like Lopez does this every year. He struggles up through August, and then come late August, September, he turns into some kind of Cy Young candidate. Keep your eye on Ronaldo Lopez fantasy fans, players, fanatics. And Abreu got another hit and 2 RBIs yesterday for the White Sox. That Cub Nationals game, Rendon went 4 for 5 with 2 RBIs. Soto went 3 for 6. Rendon now has 104 RBIs on the year. Soto has 86 RBIs on the year. And how about Asdrubal Cabrera? Was that not a crafty little move? He now has 67 RBIs on the year. He went 2 for 4 yesterday, drove into Texas, cut him. The Nationals pick him up. He's playing first base. He's playing second base. He's hitting the ball. The Nationals just looked like a team who were hibernating up until I started telling you how good they were going to be. I did. Proud of that one. Oakland and San Francisco. Have you guys been watching Mark Canha? Well, if you haven't, you need to. He's become a regular in that Oakland lineup. Now, I don't know what his role is going to be when Laureano comes back, but I do know this. Canha hit 2 home runs yesterday. He has 22 now on the year, and he was not even close to being a full-time player until about 3 weeks ago. And he still has 22 homers. Look at that A's lineup. So underrated. Chapman, Olsen, Canha. You're going to add Laureano back. I just talked about pitchers that were going to come up. Beware of the A's. And who is Donovan Solano for the 49ers, for the Giants? Football on my brain. Donovan Solano, 4 for 4 yesterday. I mean, he's been one of those under-the-radar guys. He's hitting 349. Now, his problem is he has limited playing time, but when he plays, he hits. And he hits well. He's had 171 plate appearances. He's been playing more than he's been sitting. And if you have a roster spot, you may want to consider adding Donovan Solano, who's shortstop, second base eligible on those San Francisco Giants. I want to talk just a few moments before closing the show about games today. I got some players I want you to look at for daily fantasy. Braves at the Rockies. I always love those games. Julio Teheran pitching for Atlanta, which means a firehouse may get ignited. Trevor Story's 3 for 10 with a homer off of him. Daniel Murphy's 10 for 30 with a homer. That's a 333 average. Cardinals at Brewers. Adam Wainwright pitching for St. Louis in Milwaukee. A homer-friendly environment. And Mike Moustakas is 4 for 10 with a homer off of Wainwright, a 400 average. Eric Thames, 5 for 15 with 2 homers. Hernan Perez, 6 for 17. That's a 353 clip. Lorenzo Cain, I think he may be out, but he's 5 for 15. And for the Cardinals against Gio Gonzalez, oh, this looks tasty. I'm going to give you 4. Yadier Molina, 10 for 26, 385 average. And Matt Wieters, 10 for 17, a 588 average. So either catcher that starts is worthy of starting in daily today. Dexter Fowler's 11 for 26. That's a 423 clip. And Goldie, he's the golden boy when Gio's on the mound. He's 10 for 20. That's a 500 average off of Gio Gonzalez. All those make Marcell Ozuna's 286 average with a homer and 28 career at-bats look paltry. Now, Carpenter got 3 hits yesterday, but don't go jumping on that bandwagon because in his career off Gio Gonzalez, he's 2 for 21. That's an 0.95 average. Pittsburgh's at Philadelphia. Great hitting situation. You know, the Pirates, they have started putting Kevin Newman in the leadoff spot, no matter if it's a righty or a lefty. And against a right-handed starter yesterday, Kevin Newman went 4 for 4. Now, career-wise, I don't have good numbers against Vargas. He doesn't have hardly any numbers, but I like him today in daily fantasy because he went 4 for 4 yesterday. When they're hot, you got to start them. For the Phillies, Gene Segura, 4 for 10, his career off Joe Musgrove. And that's about it from that game. And then finally, just looking at daily fantasy players, Cody Bellinger, not a good weekend this weekend against the Yankees, but he's 5 for 13 with a homer. That's a 385 average off Eric Lauer for the Padres. And I endorse him to come back and get something started. I want to talk briefly about some hot hitters. And I want to talk about the obscure, well, maybe not obscure, but if I mention Anthony Rendon, he's already owned. I mean, no league's got Anthony Rendon, even though he's hitting 483 over his last 7 games. So I'm going to skip those type of players. I already mentioned Mark Canha, who is 9 for his last 19 with 4 home runs, a 474 clip. Jonathan Villar, 9 for his last 27 with 5 home runs, a 333 clip. Willie Calhoun, 10 for 33. He's hitting 303 over his last 7 games. Ronnie Rodriguez for Detroit, 8 for his last 26. That's a 308 clip. John Berti for Miami, 292 average, 7 for his last 24 with 2 home runs. You know, these guys, Hanser Alberta, Asdrubal Cabrera, are they available in your leagues? And with Rosario out for Minnesota, Jake Cave has been playing the last few games. He's 7 for his last 15 with 3 homers. That's a 467 average. Starling Castro, who I bet Cleveland would love to have and may be trying to get through some kind of cut situation in Miami, and then Cleveland sign him with Ramirez out. He's 8 for his last 23 with 2 homers. That's a 348 average. Josh Van Meter hitting 286 over his last 7. J.P. Crawford hitting 417. Renato Nunez for Baltimore, 9 for his last 23, a 391 average. Tom Murphy for Seattle, 333 average over his last 7 days with 3 home runs. Kevin Pillar, 2 homers in his last 21 at-bats. So these are just some players that may be available in your leagues who have been hitting the ball very well the last few games. So let me give you just a few more fantasy. They may have been cut because they were injured kind of guys that you may want to be looking at. What about Mondesi for Kansas City? He's been playing at AAA the last week. Any day now, he could get called back up to Kansas City. Lourdes Gurriel for Toronto, expected back next week. These are a couple of guys, if they're available in your leagues, you may want to stash. if you're ready for playoffs, and it's that time. Because when you get a Mondesi back for Kansas City probably this week, you have stolen bases, triples, runs scored, and he was driving in some runs too in that lineup. So those are some players to look for daily and for your playoffs. Thank you for being with me this morning. I always enjoy Monday mornings because you have the weekend to talk about. Go out and watch some baseball today. Let's talk about our schedule. It's a limited schedule. Not every team is playing today. I think I told you we start off today with Atlanta in Colorado. That ought to be a doozy, huh? Tehran and Melville. And then we get into our evening slate. Pirates at Phillies, Musgrove and Vargas. From Citizens Bank in Philadelphia. At Miller Park in Milwaukee, Adam Wainwright and Gio Gonzalez go at 7:05. From Marlins Park in Miami, Sonny Gray and Lopez go at 7:10. Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City, Homer Bailey and Mitch Keller. A's at Royals, 8:15. Diamondbacks and Giants from Oracle Park in San Francisco. Young for the Diamondbacks, Beatty for the Giants. 2 late games. Dodgers at Padres, Petco Park. The rookie May going for the Dodgers, Eric Lauer for San Diego. And finally, closing out tonight, the Yankees at Mariners, to be determined, pitching for Seattle. And pitching at T-Mobile, Jay Happ for the Yankees. Those are our games for tonight. Support your podcasters. Stay on this network. It doesn't get any better than this for fantasy baseball. Thank you for being with me in the chat room this morning. And I'll look for you tomorrow morning on Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports.